Imagine falling in love to a man, trusting him with all your heart. Then something happens which turns everything you believed in down. Her husband, Alex, thought he had it all: wealth, power, fame, and a newfound love. But little did he know, life is dynamic. Stay tuned as we uncovered the full story, for you won't believe what will happen next.
Esther never imagined that love would turn into a nightmare. When she first met Alex, he was charming, ambitious, and full of dreams. He didn't have much at the time, but his love was genuine, or so it seemed. Esther, a sweet and humble woman from a modest family, fell head over heels for him. She believed in him more than anyone, and when Alex confided in her about his dreams of running a business, she promised to stand by him every step of the way. Their relationship blossomed, and soon they were married. Though money was tight, they made it work with love and mutual support. Esther took on extra jobs, staying up late at night to help Alex with his business plans. She would prepare his meals, iron his clothes, and encourage him when things got tough. Alex was her world, and she was his rock. Together, they faced the struggles of life, hand in hand. Years went by, and slowly, Alex's hard work paid off. His small business, initially struggling to survive, started growing. Orders began pouring in, and the little savings they had were turning into profit. It felt like the turning point Esther had prayed for. They were no longer living paycheck to paycheck, and Alex's success was something they both celebrated. Esther, though quietly in the background, felt proud to be part of her husband's rise to success. But with success came change, gradual at first, then rapid. Alex started spending more time at the office and less time at home. Esther didn't complain, thinking it was part of the process. She reasoned that Alex was working hard to secure their future. But there were subtle signs that something was wrong. Alex no longer looked at her the same way. The man who used to be affectionate now seemed distant. He began to brush off her concerns, claiming he was busy and stressed. Esther tried her best to hold on, believing that their love was strong enough to withstand the growing distance between them. But deep down, a small voice whispered doubts in her heart. She pushed those doubts away, convincing herself that it was all in her head. After all, they had been through so much together. How could things fall apart now? Unbeknownst to her, Alex had started leading a double life. Esther would soon discover just how drastically her world was about to change. As Alex's business grew, so did his ego. He had become a man of wealth and influence, and with that came new opportunities and new temptations. That's when Abigail entered the picture. She was everything Esther wasn't: rich, glamorous, and influential. Abigail had her own successful business, and the moment she met Alex at a networking event, sparks flew. Alex, overwhelmed by his newfound success and Abigail's charm, quickly found himself drawn to her. Abigail wasn't like Esther, who quietly supported him from the shadows. Abigail was flashy, bold, and offered Alex a taste of the high life he had only dreamed of. She introduced him to a world of luxury and power, where Esther's humble background no longer seemed appealing. At first, it started with secret meetings. Alex would lie to Esther about working late or traveling for business. Each lie came easier than the last, and soon, he was living two separate lives, one with the loyal wife who had sacrificed everything for him, and one with the seductive Abigail, who represented the wealth and status he now craved. Esther began to notice the change in Alex's behavior. He no longer came home on time, and when he did, he was cold and distant. The warmth between them had faded, replaced by short, irritable conversations. He no longer asked about her day or showed interest in her life. The man she had once loved with all her heart was slipping away from her, and she didn't know how to stop it. Her suspicions grew when she found a strange perfume on Alex's clothes, one that wasn't hers. She brushed it off at first, telling herself that maybe it was from someone at his office or an innocent encounter. But deep down, Esther knew the truth. The man she had built a life with was betraying her, but she didn't have the strength to confront him, not yet. Meanwhile, Alex was sinking deeper into his affair with Abigail. She urged him to leave Esther, telling him that his life would be better without her. Abigail promised him the world, wealth, luxury, and everything he could ever want. And Alex, blinded by greed and desire, began to seriously consider abandoning the woman who had been with him through thick and thin. For Esther, The worst was yet to come. The coldness in Alex's behavior toward Esther became unbearable. Each day, it was as if a stranger was living in their home. The man who once kissed her goodbye each morning now left without a word. The intimacy they once shared had dissolved into thin air, replaced by silence and resentment. Esther did everything in her power to reignite the spark. She made his favorite meals, dressed up more often, and tried to engage him in meaningful conversations, but Alex barely acknowledged her efforts. He was already miles away emotionally, caught up in the whirlwind of his affair with Abigail. Esther's breaking point came one evening when she found a dinner receipt in Alex's jacket pocket. Dinner for two at a luxurious restaurant she had never been to. Her heart pounded as she held the evidence in her hands. She could no longer deny the truth she had been avoiding for months. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she fought them back. Esther wasn't ready to break down, not yet. She needed answers. Later that night, when Alex came home, she confronted him. Her voice trembled as she asked, "Alex, who have you been spending time with? What's happening to us?" Alex barely flinched. His face remained indifferent, almost annoyed that she dared to ask. "I don't know what you're talking about, Esther. Don't start this nonsense," he said coldly, dismissing her like she was an inconvenience. But Esther refused to back down. "I found the receipt, Alex. You've been lying to me, haven't you? There's someone else, isn't there?" The silence that followed felt like a knife twisting in her chest. Alex didn't deny it. His silence was all the confirmation she needed. The air between them grew tense, thick with unspoken truths. Esther's heart shattered, but she managed to keep her composure. She needed to hear it from his own lips, no matter how much it hurt. "Who is she?" Esther demanded, her voice stronger now, though her hands were shaking. Alex sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair. He looked at her with an emotionless gaze and said the words that would change everything. "Her name is Abigail, and she's everything you're not." The words pierced Esther's soul like 1,000 needles. Everything she had feared was real, and now she was standing face to face with the cruel truth. She had sacrificed everything for this man, her time, her energy, her heart, and yet it still wasn't enough for him. How could he say that after everything they'd been through? How could he reduce her to nothing in such a heartless way? In that moment, Esther knew their marriage was over. But the worst part wasn't the betrayal itself, it was the realization that Alex had never valued her. She was just a stepping stone for him, someone to lean on when he was down, only to discard when he reached the top. Esther felt the weight of the years she had invested in their marriage crumbling beneath her feet. With tears streaming down her face, she whispered, "I hope she's worth it, Alex. Because you've lost the best thing that ever happened to you." Alex didn't respond. He simply turned and walked away, leaving Esther standing alone in the empty room, her heart shattered into pieces. Days turned into weeks, and Esther felt like she was walking through a fog of pain and disbelief. The reality of Alex's betrayal was unbearable. She had never imagined that the man she loved would hurt her in such a cruel way. Each morning, she woke up feeling the weight of the heartbreak pressing down on her chest, and each night, she cried herself to sleep, hoping the pain would subside. But it didn't. The loneliness crept in like a dark cloud that hovered over her, following her everywhere. Friends and family began to notice the change in her. The once vibrant and cheerful Esther had become a shadow of herself, withdrawn, quiet, and broken. She tried to put on a brave face, but the hurt was too deep. Meanwhile, Alex had moved in with Abigail. The lavish life he now lived was a far cry from the humble beginnings he and Esther had shared. Abigail spoiled him with expensive gifts and fancy vacations. The life Alex had always dreamed of was now his reality, but it came at a price. Though Abigail showered him with material things, their relationship was built on a foundation of selfishness and greed. What Alex didn't realize was that he had traded something real for something hollow. Back at home, Esther was left to pick up the pieces of her shattered life. She had given Alex everything she had, and now she was left with nothing. The house they once shared felt like a prison, filled with memories of a love that no longer existed. Every corner reminded her of the man who had abandoned her, and every quiet moment brought back the echo of his hurtful words. Esther's friends encouraged her to leave the house and take some time for herself, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. She felt trapped in a cycle of grief, unable to move forward or let go. She wasn't just mourning the loss of her marriage, she was mourning the life she thought they would have together, the future they had once planned so carefully. One night, as Esther sat alone in the darkened living room, she made a decision. She wasn't going to let Alex's betrayal destroy her. She had spent too long feeling sorry for herself, and it was time to take back control of her life. She may have lost him, but she still had herself. And no one, not Alex, not Abigail, could take that away from her. Determined to rebuild her life, Esther reached out to her friends, who welcomed her with open arms. Slowly but surely, she started to find her footing again. She began focusing on herself, rediscovering her passions and interests, things she had abandoned during her marriage to support Alex. It was difficult, and some days the pain felt overwhelming, but little by little, Esther began to heal. But while Esther was healing, Alex's perfect life was beginning to fall apart. Karma was on its way, and it was about to deliver a lesson he wouldn't forget. While Esther began to rebuild her shattered life, focusing on her healing and rediscovering her inner strength, Alex's life was beginning to unravel, though at first, it wasn't obvious to him. On the surface, everything seemed perfect. He had wealth, status, and the glamorous Abigail by his side. He attended the finest events, drove expensive cars, and rubbed shoulders with the rich and powerful. But beneath the glitter and gold, cracks were beginning to form in his seemingly flawless world. Abigail, who had once seemed so alluring and exciting, was becoming less and less patient with Alex. She had enjoyed the thrill of the chase, the power of stealing him away from his wife, and the lifestyle that came with dating a wealthy man. But now that the novelty had worn off, Abigail's true nature began to show. She was demanding, selfish, and rarely satisfied with anything Alex did. Her love wasn't unconditional, it was transactional. In the beginning, Abigail showered Alex with affection, making him feel like a king. But now, she criticized him constantly, his business decisions, the way he dressed, even how he spoke. No matter how hard Alex tried to please her, it was never enough. Abigail had turned into a tyrant, and their once passionate relationship was quickly becoming a source of stress and frustration for Alex. At the same time, his business, which had been thriving, was starting to suffer. His focus had shifted from managing his company to maintaining his image and catering to Abigail's endless demands. As a result, he made poor decisions, trusted the wrong people, and let important opportunities slip through his fingers. Profits were dropping, and his once loyal employees were beginning to lose faith in his leadership. Alex's nights were no longer filled with excitement and passion but with arguments and tension. Abigail, who once adored him, now spent more time criticizing him and comparing him to other, more successful men. Alex's ego, once inflated by his success, was now crumbling under the weight of Abigail's constant dissatisfaction. He realized that the high life he had pursued wasn't as glamorous as it had seemed. Meanwhile, Esther's life was blossoming in unexpected ways. With Alex gone, she had more time to focus on her career and personal goals. She began volunteering at a local charity, helping women who had gone through similar experiences. Her friends rallied around her, offering support and encouragement. Esther found a new sense of purpose in helping others, and it gave her the strength to keep moving forward. But as Esther's light grew brighter, Alex's world grew darker. Karma was starting to make its presence known in his life, and the whispers of regret were becoming harder to ignore. Alex had everything he thought he wanted, but he was miserable. The love he had thrown away was the very thing he now longed for, but it was too late to turn back. Alex's downfall began slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, but soon it became impossible to ignore. The warning signs that had once been subtle were now glaring. Abigail's demands became more outrageous, and Alex's business troubles intensified. He tried to hold everything together, but the stress was overwhelming. Sleepless nights turned into constant anxiety, and the life he had fought so hard to build was slipping away. One evening, after yet another argument with Abigail about money, specifically, her insatiable desire for more Alex reached his breaking point. He realized that no matter how much he gave her, it would never be enough. Abigail wasn't in love with him, she was in love with what he could provide. The realization hit him hard. For the first time in years, Alex began to question the choices that had led him to this point. He thought about Esther, her quiet strength, her loyalty, the sacrifices she had made for him. In his rush to chase after wealth and status, Alex had traded a genuine love for something shallow and fleeting. The guilt began to gnaw at him, but it was more than guilt, it was regret. He had been blind to what truly mattered, and now he was paying the price. Meanwhile, Abigail's true intentions became clearer. She had been using Alex to climb the social ladder, and now that his business was struggling, she began to lose interest in him. She spent more and more time out at parties, sometimes without inviting Alex, making excuses about business meetings and networking events. Alex, once the center of her world, was now just another stepping stone on her path to success. Then, the final blow came. One evening, as Alex was working late to try and salvage his crumbling business, he received a phone call. It was one of his closest business partners, a man he had trusted completely. The partner informed him, coldly and without remorse, that he was pulling out of a major deal they had been working on for months. It was the deal that Alex had been counting on to save his company from the financial troubles it was facing. Without it, everything would collapse. Alex tried to reason with him, but it was no use. His partner had found a better opportunity elsewhere and didn't care about loyalty or friendship. With the deal gone, Alex's company would be bankrupt within weeks. The reality of his situation hit him like a tidal wave. He had lost his business, his wealth, and now, it seemed, even Abigail. When he returned home that night, he found Abigail packing her bags. She didn't bother to hide her disdain as she told him that she was leaving. "I'm not staying with a failure, Alex," she said coldly, her eyes full of contempt. "You're not the man I thought you were." Her words were like daggers to his heart. Alex stood there, numb, watching as the woman he had sacrificed everything for walked out of his life without a second thought. The luxurious apartment that had once symbolized his success now felt like a tomb, empty and hollow. As the door closed behind Abigail, Alex collapsed onto the floor, overwhelmed by the weight of his mistakes. He had traded a life of love and loyalty for greed and superficiality, and now he was left with nothing. Karma had come full circle, and Alex was finally paying the price for his betrayal. The days after Abigail's departure were some of the darkest in Alex's life. Everything he had once taken for granted had slipped through his fingers, and now he was left with nothing but the crushing weight of regret. The luxurious apartment that had once been filled with laughter and excitement felt like a cold, empty shell. The silence was deafening, and Alex found himself haunted by memories of the life he had thrown away. His business, once a thriving empire, was crumbling. The news of his financial collapse spread quickly, and soon, Alex was facing lawsuits, creditors, and the media frenzy that accompanied his downfall. The man who had once been admired and envied by many was now a public figure of ridicule. He was no longer Alex, the successful businessman. He was Alex, the man who had lost everything. But the most painful part was not the loss of his wealth or status, it was the loss of Esther. In the quiet of his now lonely apartment, Alex's thoughts constantly drifted back to her. He remembered her smile, the way she always supported him, the sacrifices she had made for their marriage. He had betrayed the one person who had truly loved him for who he was, not for what he could provide. Alex couldn't shake the memory of the day he left Esther. He had been so caught up in the excitement of his new life with Abigail that he hadn't cared about the pain he was causing. He had convinced himself that leaving Esther was the right thing to do, that he deserved more, that he deserved better. But now, he saw things clearly. He had left behind a woman of strength, loyalty, and kindness for someone who had only been interested in his wealth and status. One evening, as Alex sat alone in his empty apartment, he picked up the phone and dialed Esther's number. His heart pounded as he listened to the phone ring, but there was no answer. He tried again the next day, and the day after that, but still, no response. The silence on the other end of the line felt like a cruel reminder of the damage he had caused. Desperate for closure, Alex decided to visit Esther. He wasn't sure what he would say, but he knew he needed to apologize to make things right, if that was even possible. With his heart heavy and his mind racing, Alex drove to the house they had once shared, hoping that she would be willing to listen. As he pulled up in front of the house, his stomach churned with anxiety. It looked different now, brighter, more vibrant. He could see that Esther had been taking care of herself and the home, something that filled him with even more regret. He walked up to the door, hesitated for a moment, and then knocked. After a few seconds, the door opened, and there she stood, Esther. She looked stronger, more radiant than he had remembered, and the sight of her took his breath away. But there was something else in her eyes now, a strength, a self-assurance that he had never truly appreciated before. "Alex." Her voice was calm, but distant. "Esther. I need to talk to you," Alex said, his voice trembling with emotion. Esther looked at him for a moment, her expression unreadable, before stepping aside to let him in. As Alex stepped into the house, memories of their life together flooded his mind. The familiar scent of the place, the warmth that once symbolized their bond, it all came rushing back. But now, everything felt different. The house was the same, but the atmosphere was heavier. He felt like a stranger in the place that had once been his home. Esther motioned for him to sit down at the kitchen table, the same table where they had shared countless meals, conversations, and dreams. She sat across from him, her face calm but guarded, waiting for him to speak. "I don't know where to start," Alex began, his voice heavy with regret. I made the biggest mistake of my life when I left you, Esther. I've lost everything, my business, my money, even Abigail. And through it all, the one thing I can't stop thinking about is you. How much I hurt you, how much I threw away." Esther listened quietly, her expression unreadable. She didn't interrupt or rush him, but the silence between them was filled with the weight of their shared history. "I thought I was chasing happiness," Alex continued, his eyes downcast. "But I was chasing the wrong things. I was selfish, blinded by my own greed and arrogance. I didn't appreciate what I had when I had it. You were always there for me, and I betrayed you. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I just needed you to know that I'm sorry. For everything." The room was silent for a long moment after Alex finished speaking. Esther didn't say anything right away, and Alex could feel his heart pounding in his chest, waiting for her response. He had no idea what she was thinking, but he could see that she was carefully considering her words. Finally, Esther spoke, her voice steady and calm. "Alex, I've had a lot of time to think about what happened between us. You broke my heart in ways I never imagined, and for a long time, I didn't think I'd ever recover. But I've moved on. I've had to pick up the pieces of my life, and in doing so, I've realized that I'm stronger than I thought I was." Her words cut deep, but they were filled with truth. Alex felt the full weight of his actions settling on him as he listened to her. "I won't lie to you," she continued. "It wasn't easy. There were nights when I thought I'd never stop hurting. But with time, I healed. I found new strength in myself, in the people who stood by me. You may have shattered my heart, Alex, but you didn't destroy me." Alex swallowed hard, feeling both admiration for her resilience and shame for what he had done. "I wish I could take it all back," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "You can't," Esther said firmly. "But that's okay. I've learned that some things happen for a reason. Your betrayal forced me to find myself again. It showed me that I don't need anyone to complete me, I am enough on my own." The strength in her voice was undeniable, and Alex knew that the woman sitting in front of him was no longer the same Esther he had left behind. She had grown, evolved, and become someone who no longer needed him. "I forgive you, Alex," Esther said, her words surprising him. "Not for your sake, but for mine. I deserve to be free of the pain you caused me, and holding on to that anger doesn't serve me anymore. But forgiving you doesn't mean I'll ever forget. We're not the same people we were back then." Alex nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "I don't deserve it, but thank you." Esther gave him a small, sad smile. "No, you don't. But life has a way of balancing itself out. We all have to face the consequences of our actions, Alex. In the end, karma comes for us all." With those words, Alex realized that his journey of regret was far from over. He had apologized, but the scars he left on Esther's heart would remain. Karma had already begun to take its toll on his life, and now, he would have to face the full weight of what he had done. Leaving Esther's house that day, Alex felt a whirlwind of emotions, regret, shame, and a deep sense of loss. Her forgiveness had come as a shock, But it wasn't the closure he had expected. She was right. They were no longer the same people, and there was no going back. What he had once believed to be his life's greatest victory, leaving Esther for a life of wealth and glamour, had instead become his greatest downfall. Karma had already started to unravel his life in ways he never imagined, but there was one final blow waiting for him. The next morning, Alex received a call from his lawyer. It wasn't about his failing business or the mounting lawsuits this time. It was about Abigail. "Alex, we need to talk," the lawyer said, his voice somber. "What is it now?" Alex asked, exhausted by the constant stream of bad news. "It's Abigail. She's filed a lawsuit against you for fraud and emotional distress." The words hit Alex like a ton of bricks. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "What? How could she do that? I lost everything because of her." The lawyer sighed. "She's claiming that you misled her about your finances and that you promised her a lifestyle you couldn't sustain. She's also accusing you of manipulating her into staying with you under false pretenses." Alex's hands trembled as he gripped the phone. This was a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. Abigail had been with him when things were good, but the moment everything fell apart, she had abandoned him. Now, she was coming back to destroy whatever little dignity he had left. "Can she win this?" Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "With the evidence she's presented and the current state of your finances, it's not looking good," the lawyer admitted. "You could lose everything." Alex hung up the phone in disbelief. Abigail's betrayal was the final piece of his downfall. The woman he had sacrificed his marriage for, the one he had built his new life around, was now determined to ruin him. He had lost Esther, his business, and now, even the illusion of love with Abigail had shattered. Karma was merciless, and Alex was finally understanding the full weight of his actions. The universe had a way of balancing the scales, and Alex was paying the price for the choices he had made. Desperate and broken, Alex tried to reach out to Abigail, but she refused to answer his calls. His lawyer's warnings echoed in his head, and the thought of facing Abigail in court filled him with dread. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had once been the powerful, successful man, controlling the fate of others. Now, his fate was in the hands of a woman who saw him as nothing more than a stepping stone in her quest for wealth and status. As he sat in the empty apartment, staring at the walls that had once symbolized his success, Alex realized that this was the end. He had hit rock bottom, and there was no one left to blame but himself. Karma had come for him, and it had taken everything. The trial against Alex was swift and brutal. Abigail's legal team painted a damning picture of him as a manipulative man who had used his wealth and power to control her. The court sympathized with her, and Alex found himself with no defense. The evidence was stacked against him, his business was in ruins, his finances were a mess, and his reputation was tarnished beyond repair. In the end, the court ruled in Abigail's favor. Alex was ordered to pay a hefty settlement, one that would leave him in financial ruin for the foreseeable future. The life he had once known, the life of luxury, success, and admiration, was now a distant memory. All that remained was a man stripped of everything he had ever valued. As he walked out of the courthouse, Alex felt numb. He had lost everything: his marriage, his business, his wealth, and even his dignity. The people who had once surrounded him, feeding off his success, had long disappeared. He was alone in every sense of the word. The media had a field day with his downfall. Headlines like "Once a business tycoon, now a broken man and the fall of Alex," a tale of greed and betrayal dominated the news. He had become a public spectacle, a cautionary tale for anyone who dared to put greed and ambition above loyalty and love. Weeks passed, and Alex found himself spiraling into a deep depression. His phone, once constantly buzzing with calls and messages from business associates and friends, was now silent. He wandered the streets aimlessly, a shadow of the man he used to be. The expensive suits, the fancy cars, the high-rise apartment, none of it mattered anymore. It had all been an illusion, and now he was left with nothing but the bitter taste of regret. One day, while sitting in a small cafe, Alex caught a glimpse of Esther in the distance. She was walking with a group of friends, laughing and smiling, her radiant energy shining brighter than ever. She looked happy, truly happy. And in that moment, Alex realized that she had found peace, despite everything he had done to her. She had moved on, stronger and more resilient than ever. For a fleeting moment, Alex thought about approaching her, but he quickly dismissed the idea. He didn't deserve to disrupt her life anymore. She had given him more chances than he deserved, and now she was free. Free from the pain he had caused, free from the betrayal, and free from the life they had once shared. As Alex sat there, watching Esther disappear into the crowd, he finally understood the full cost of his betrayal. It wasn't just the loss of money or status, it was the loss of something far more precious: love, loyalty, and respect. He had taken those things for granted, and now, he would never have them again. Karma had come full circle, and Alex was left with nothing but the hollow shell of the man he had once been. The price of his actions had been steep, and there was no escaping the consequences. In the end, Alex realized that the most painful punishment wasn't the loss of his wealth or his reputation, it was knowing that he had destroyed the one true thing he had ever had, his relationship with Esther. And that was something he could never get back. From the story, we can examine these moral lessons. Betrayal has consequences. Alex's decision to betray Esther in pursuit of wealth and superficial happiness ultimately leads to his downfall. The story shows that betraying those who truly care for you, especially for selfish reasons, brings long-term regret and suffering. Trust, once broken, can never be fully repaired. Karma is inevitable. The story illustrates the principle of karma: what goes around comes around. Alex mistreated Esther and pursued a life of luxury and greed, but in the end, he faced severe consequences for his actions. The universe balances itself out, and those who wrong others will eventually face the repercussions of their deeds. Forgiveness is a sign of strength. Despite the pain Alex caused her, Esther's ability to forgive him demonstrates her emotional strength and resilience. Forgiveness is not about condoning someone's actions, but about freeing oneself from the burden of hatred and bitterness. Esther's forgiveness allowed her to move on and live a fulfilled life. True happiness comes from within. Alex's pursuit of wealth and status only led to misery, while Esther, despite her initial heartbreak, found happiness and peace by focusing on her inner strength and growth. The story emphasizes that material possessions and external success cannot replace true happiness, which comes from self-acceptance, love, and personal integrity. Loyalty is priceless. Esther's unwavering loyalty and dedication, even when Alex betrayed her, reflects the value of loyalty in relationships. However, the story also highlights the importance of recognizing when loyalty is no longer reciprocated, and moving forward when someone is undeserving of it. Greed leads to destruction. Alex's greed for more wealth and status blinded him to what truly mattered in life. His desire for superficial success drove him to abandon the woman who loved him, and in the end, it destroyed everything he had built. Greed not only harms relationships but can also lead to one's self-destruction. Love is not measured by wealth. Throughout the story, Alex equated success with material wealth, while Esther valued love, trust, and emotional connection. The story reminds us that genuine love cannot be bought or measured by financial status. It is built on mutual respect, trust, and care. The importance of self-worth. Esther's journey shows the importance of knowing one's self-worth. Despite being betrayed, she didn't allow Alex's actions to destroy her spirit. She regained her sense of self and refused to let her past define her future. Knowing your own value and not settling for less is a key takeaway. Toxic relationships come with a price. Alex's relationship with Abigail was based on manipulation, deception, and materialism, rather than love and trust. In the end, it turned toxic, leaving him more broken than before. The story teaches that relationships built on falsehoods and greed are destined to fail. Redemption comes from within, not from others. Alex sought redemption by trying to rekindle his relationship with Esther, but she had already moved on. True redemption requires personal growth and acknowledgement of one's wrongdoings, rather than seeking external validation or forgiveness to relieve one's guilt. Here comes to an end of the story, but if you enjoyed it, then hit on the like button, subscribe and turn on the notification bell to be the first to watch our next video, and also let's know in the comment where you are watching from.